Thanks, Stephen. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Appreciate you taking the time. As Stephen said, we're going to go through our 3 most popular Acumen tools that are intended for saving you time when you're doing your everyday tasks in Sage 300, and we're offering these for 3 months. So if you're interested in it, let us know or talk to your account managers. These tools that we built, I'm going to show you the journal entry tool, the bank entry tool, and this PO tool for updating arrivals today. We built these over the last few years. They're all Excel-based, and they really came out of a place of listening to our customers complain about this taking us too long or this part being confusing. And the journal entry, which of course pretty much everyone does journal entries, that was not surprisingly the place that we heard the most kind of complaints. So the challenge with the journal entries is you can do an import from I love Sage. I've been doing Sage 300 for almost 20 years. But if I'm honest, the import transaction that's built in is a little confusing. You can do anything you want. Every single column is there, but it's not really in English, and there's a lot of extra tabs, and so it's just a common point of confusion. So that was part of where we kind of started with this from. And then the second thing, we know that a lot of people do journal entries at the end of every month. Sometimes they're accruals or allocations or reclasses, and that's kind of one of the things that slows down the close cycle. And we know that the accountants that are doing these entries, they are really comfortable with Excel. So it kind of made sense to build these in Excel. And we found that most people are actually already working in Excel, and they're kind of figuring out what these journal entries should be, in Excel. And then at the end of doing all that work in Excel, they flip over to their Sage 300 and they create a batch and they go ahead and key in the journal entries. So I'm suspecting that might sound familiar to some, if not all of you. And as I'm sure you know, there's a few big problems with that. If you're a controller or a CFO or even a staff accountant, you're an expensive resource to be turning around and doing that data entry. Data entry, of course, leads to mistakes, which can be time-consuming to find. And then also, if you're data entering in detail, it's just one more thing that takes time that kind of delays the close and being able to get the reports out to the people that need to see it. Sometimes we see people, delay the close and spend that day every month to key in the entries. And some people will just do a summarized entry, which kind of works in the short term. But if you ever have a question about that entry, you got to go back to the source material and pull all of that data because it's not in the system. So the idea is there's a quick, easy way to get the data into Sage without having to do that journal entries. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Sage, move this away. So here's my Sage 300. And just real quick, for those of you, just in case someone's not familiar, if I'm putting in a journal entry, this is the usual way. I'm going to go to the batch listing. I'm going to type new, and I'm going to say new batch. I'm going to say this is a JE. I'm going to go through here. I'm going to work through my entry, and I'm going to add my entry, right? So the way we have it set up in the Acumen Tools is we have these Excel-based spreadsheets. So you can see all of the key columns are included, in the spreadsheet. And we even have a finder that lets you look up the data or look up the company. These are multi-company. So if I'm in my Sage, let me just go ahead and close this real quick. My Sage has 3 different companies. I've got a few different variations of the sample data, but I can actually import to more than one company all at the same time. So if I click down on my cell and I click on my Finder button here, it pops up and I can see which company I want, and then it's Excel. So of course I can copy and paste, and I can say this journal entry is for 4/1/2020, and this is going to equal that cell. My source, those are just the categories that we use to classify journal entries. If I know it, I can type JE, or if I'm looking for it, I've got my Finder, of course. So I'm just going to do JE. And then I can look up my accounts as well. So I was just kind of imagining a simple journal entry here, like a reclass of some sales. So I would say reclass of March sales. This is not something I want to accrue. I have the option to post it automatically. So if I put this on no, when it makes the journal entry, it's going to make the batch and it's going to leave it as you've got those segregations of duties. But if it's just me and I trust that I'm doing right and I don't have segregation of duties, I can set it to auto post. I don't even need to directly log into Sage at all. And then my debits and credits column is just kind of summarizing what's going on here. So if I know my account, I can go ahead and type it, or I can use my Finder and say I'm looking for an account that starts with 4. And I'm going to say that store. I'm going to copy. I'm going to paste. I'm going to say I'm going to move stuff from store 10 to store 20. So this is fix miscode of revenue. Copy, paste. And then I'm going to say this is $1,000 and this is $1,000. And if I was doing more than one store, I could just keep going down and pick more stores or more companies. But once I've got it set, I'm just going to go ahead and click on the import button, and that will bring in the data into Sage 300. It's looking at my security. So if I don't have rights to do journal entries in one of the companies I pick, it's going to say, sorry, you can't do it. If I have rights to import, but I don't have rights to post, it's going to say, okay, I can import it, but you need to set the auto post to. If I've got any data that's bad, so let me just type some bad data here. When I click on import, it checks all my data and says, hey, something wasn't quite right, and I put a comment in the cell. So I knew I did a bad job here, but if I go ahead, I can roll my mouse over, and I can see that I picked an invalid source ledger. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, find, and I'm going to use my JE. And I can actually make more than one journal entry at the same time. So if they're on different companies, it's going to be separate journal entries, of course, because they're in different companies. But if I have different posting dates, it's going to group the journal entries into one entry for each posting date. But everything looks good here. I'm going to go ahead and click on the import button and check my data. It says your data's right. So you want to go ahead and import it. And I'll say yes. It brought it into Sage, and it posted it, and it made batch 282. So if I hop over to my Sage, and I open up my batch list, and I refresh, I've got this reclass, and I'm fixing my revenue mistake that was somewhere. So that might be a little faster. It might be pretty close to actually manually doing that journal entry. Where we start to save time is if you've got that data about that reclass, you've exported something from a point of sale system or from your CRM system or some other system that has that data, and avoiding keying it in, you can copy and paste it into those debit and credit columns, or you're certainly going to save time if that entry spans multiple companies. Or something that we see people do a lot of is actually set up a template and reuse that template over and over every month. So I was imagining just a quick template for doing a payroll accrual. So if you just imagine for me that you've got your payroll in the system already, but your payroll is weekly payroll and it's spanned over the course of a month. So I'm going to make a template here. I'm going to call this payroll accrual. And this is going to be an accrual, so I'm going to want it to auto post yes. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete my values. I'm going to go and make another tab where I can start to put my data, because just because I can key the data into these cells, I can also copy and paste it, or I can actually use cell references and point to the data someplace else. So if I've got data that I'm copying and pasting for someplace else, I can put it in another tab that could be the exact format of whatever I copy and pasted from the payroll software or from the register or wherever else I can get some sort of report, the HR system. So if I just say this is my date, my year, my month, I'm just going to say a big entry for 4. We'll do 3/31/2020. And I'm going to make a formula for my year there. And then I'm going to say I need one for my month. I want it to look like a nice month. So we'll do, it's got my month. And I'm going to say employee. And then if you just imagine I went to my payroll system and I got some employees and their annual salaries, and I go ahead and paste that in there. I can say this is their annual salary. Probably misspelled something. Everyone's always giving me a hard time about my spelling. And then the next one I can say this is my weekly, and this is my daily, and this is my accrual amount. I'm just going to write a couple of formulas. Divided by 52 equals divided by 7. Oops, divided by 7. And then actually I forgot to add a row in here for number of days. I'm going to say there were maybe 3 days that crossed over between this month and last month. And I'm going to say this equals this times my number of days. And then I can just go ahead and take advantage of my copy down in Excel. So far so good. And I don't have to do this every month. I can do this one time, and I can save this Excel template here. And so now if I go back to my entry, I'm going to make this is actually going to be, I'm going to say equals here, and I'm going to make it a 4 so it remembers it. And then my source is going to be JE. And then if I know my account, of course, I can type in my account. So if I've got a maybe a indirect expense for payroll, and then I want to take it out of where we coded the rest of the payroll cost, 2046. And then I can write a formula and actually pull in, this person's name. If I pull in that name into the reference, I can actually, I'll have that in my GL transaction listing so I can see what portion of it went there. I'm going to say equals, go back and pull my debit amount for the daily, pull my credit amount, and I can go to my payroll accrual. I'm going to say equals, and month. So I've got a nice description, and I can go ahead and I can start to copy these down. And then so once I've got this template set up, I can save this file, and every month I just need to go in here. Someone changed their salary, of course. If we lost an employee or added an employee, we've got to adjust the list. But really, if this month was going to be 4 days, not 3 days, and I can change this to, let's say it's the end of this month, 2020. All my numbers recalculate. They flow over here. And if this was going to be in different companies, it can be in different companies all at the same time. And then once I've got that set up, I can say import, my data's good. I'll say yes, and it's gone in, it's made batch 283. So it's sort of, I always tell people, it's a little bit like do-it-yourself, integration, right? You can bring data from another system, you can copy and paste it, you can spend a little bit of time. I did this in just a couple of minutes, and I made a template, and I can use that template every month. I usually just tell people, go ahead and save this file, right? Take this file and do a file save as, give it a name, and say this is going to be my, accrual, my payroll accrual for 4/30/2020, right? And I've got that file. And the next month, I'm just going to open up that file and do that save as again, but I'm going to change the amounts, update a couple of things that need to be updated, and I can get all of the detail into my GL with only a few minutes of work each month. And even the original creation of the template shouldn't take you, maybe a couple hours, but at the most, it's really that. And then you can, just cut down your time that it takes you without actually having to do data entry. So this can apply for all sorts of different types of transactions. I've got another one. I won't take you through building it, but I have, where was it? I have this one that is a loan expense. So I took the standard template in Excel for building a loan schedule, and I kind of calculated out, if we took this loan to buy an automobile, what portion of it is principal and what portion of it is interest, so that we can make the entry every month for the interest portion to recognize the, the monthly interest over the long-term interest. And after that, I, go ahead and fill in my formulas to point to that other tab, and I've got all of the data. So every month I can come in and I can make the entry. Or because Sage will let me make entries out into the future, as long as I have rights and as long as I open up the rest of the year of those periods of my fiscal calendar, I can actually make a whole bunch of journal entries all at one time way out into the future. And because these are different dates, each one of these is going to be an individual entry. So that's the journal entry tool. Hopefully it's making sense to you all. The next one that we started to build after the journal entry tool was the bank tool. And the bank tool can work for a lot of the same things as the journal entry tool. Certainly if you're using Sage 300 and you've got a cash-related transaction, you want to bring it into the bank module instead of straight to the general ledger so that you can have that in your GL. And for those of you If you're not familiar, bank entries are under Common Services, Bank Transactions. And I would go in here and I would record a bank entry. I'm going to put in my, my bank that it's for. I'm going to say that this is a withdrawal or a deposit, and then I'm going to code the offset of it. And the cash account comes from being linked to the bank code. So one thing, because these can be used across multiple companies, we can actually do what would be the equivalent of a bank transfer. So if I've got company A set up in Sage and company B set up in Sage, and I transfer money, maybe I'm repaying, some due froms as part of the year end or something like that, I would actually have to log into one company to record the deposit and log into the other company and would record the withdrawal. And I got to log in and out of both, but I can just do that all from this one screen. So if I just do bank transfer, year end, due to, I can have this auto post, same as the journal entry. Do I want to have to leave it open so someone else can review it and post it within the module, or do I just want to post it because I've got rights to go all the way through? I've got a note field, and then I've got the option to summarize this entry. So I'll show you an example of where that comes into play in just a minute. But if you just imagine the bank transfer, which I misspelled, somebody's probably looking at that and being bothered. I'm going to go ahead and pick the company. And these are just the 6-character headings that are in your Sage that we can look up. But if you're on your Sage screen and you open up any of the screens, these codes are always at the top here. So I know some people never notice them because you're in one company, but if you've got a lot of companies and you do financial statements, you probably have seen them. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to bring this in from, maybe I do count 2000, count 2010. And I don't remember my bank code, so I'm going to use my Finder and look up and say, I'm going to choose the CCB Bank. And then, whoops. And then for this one, I'm going to pick for my LTD. I'm going to choose my C-Tech Bank. And the transaction, that's just a descriptor or a date. I don't have this wide enough. That's my date, so I can say that's 4/1/2020, 4/1/2020. And then if these numbers are positive numbers, this would be a deposit. And if this number is a negative number, so I could say equals negative the line above it, it's going to be a withdrawal. And then I can say equals that, F4, copy down. And so effectively, I'm taking, $100 out of the C-Tech and SAM LTD, and I'm depositing that same $100 in the CCC Bank in SAM Inc. to kind of clear up those two froms. Same as the other modules, or the other screen, if I have something that's wrong when I click on import, if something's not right, it's going to say, hey, I can't import anything. It's an all or nothing situation, and I'm going to leave you a note as to where it is, so I can go over and I can see, well, that's an invalid bank code. That makes sense. And we also have a help button over here. So if you click on this question mark, it goes through and tells you what each of the column headings are. So if I click on OK, it's added comments into every single field and tells you, what it's expecting it to be. So I'll go ahead and click on import. My data is good. It says, do I want to import it? And I'm going to say sure. And it's imported, and it's now in Sage, and it's telling me that I can go to bank transaction 30 in SAM Inc. and then 03 in SAM LTD. So if I go over to my bank entry screen, because it's posted, yep, there it is. You can see here's my year-to-date transfer. Let me just show you one that I got one that's a template that I built for banks. I don't want to take you through building another template, but just to kind of get you thinking. You could use this for any sort of monthly things that are automatically getting removed from your bank account. So if there's car leases in this example, coming out every month out of your bank account and you're keying those in, or, if there's rent coming out or health insurance or anything that's getting pulled directly out of your bank account, you can put these all into either one template or separate templates. So if I say this is a single entry, for each company, for each day, it's going to sum up these amounts and make one amount for that entry. So if what I need to do is record a withdrawal for $1,800 because that's come out and that's going to be one line that I clear in my bank rec, but I want these to come in as single entries. But if I set these leases up at different times and I want a line to clear that's, you know, withdraw 564 and a separate line that's a line of 443, that's where my single entry yes or no comes into place. And what it'll do if I've got it to no, I've got to actually click on edit first. If I click on no, it will make one bank entry for each individual line so that I've got things to clear in the bank rec. So hopefully that's making sense to you all. So that's two of my three tools down. Let me take you to the last one. The last one is a little bit of a twist. We took the idea of you know, sending to Sage, and we added on the idea of pulling for Sage. So this was another kind of common issue that we were hearing from our customers, was the time that it takes to update arrival dates in PO. So if you just sort of imagine here for a moment that you're running the purchase order module, and you've got a big vendor, and they just called to give you an update and say all their inventory is coming from China, and it's all going to be delayed by 2 weeks for, you know, the pandemic, or for some other reason, it's all been delayed by 2 weeks. So if that's the case and you want to update that information, all of those lines in Sage, you would have to go into the purchase order module and open up all of the POs that are open for that vendor. So I'm going to say vendor 1200. I'm going to pick one of my POs and I'm going to go through the lines. This one's nice and easy. I've only got one line, and I can change the expected arrival date here to be, you know, it's no longer going to be the first of the month. It's now going to be the last of the month. That's upset with me about unit cost. But I'd have to go through every line on every one of those PO and move them all forward, you know, a few weeks. And if this one wasn't one line, it was actually, you know, 100 different lines. Unfortunately, one of the other challenges with H300 is there's no way to search the lines and there's no way to sort the lines. So you're doing a little bit of a hunt and peck. So what we did was we came up with this spreadsheet. And it does work with one company or does work with multiple companies, so I can pull data from multiple companies all at the same time and write them back. It works particularly well, you know, if I can standardize my vendor number across companies. So if I have, you know, the same 1200 vendor in every single company, and if you don't, but they are the same vendor, there is a tool, there is a vendor number change tool in Sage 300 that you can use to renumber those vendors so that they're the same without losing any of your history. If you're not familiar, that's something we can help with. But I'm just going to say, I'm going to imagine it's two companies, and I don't remember my ID, so I'm going to click on the Finder, and I'm going to choose the vendor, or the second company. So it's going to loop through all these companies, and if I leave this vendor number blank, it's going to give me literally every single line from every single open PO. But if I know my vendor number, I'm just going to go ahead and type my vendor number so that I don't get too much data. And this is the more likely way that you use it, because the most likely answer is a particular vendor's called and said, here's everything's delayed, or these items are delayed, or these things are coming sooner and these things are coming later. But I put in this vendor number, I click on retrieve, and it says, if you got any data on here, we're going to clear it away. So just be 100% sure. We just don't want you to mistakenly click on retrieve. I say yes. And what it does is it pulls through all the data from Sage. And now I've got all of the details in here in Sage. And these are all of the current expected arrival dates. And so I can go through any of these. I can filter it by PO number, you know, just using regular Excel filters. If I brought in more than one vendor number, I could filter by that. And also, very helpfully, I can search for particular vendor numbers. So these were now all actually going to be showing up 9-1. Got to type it right, 2020. Copy, paste. Bring these down here. I can actually go ahead and update all of those lines. So they said vendor 11. I'm going to do one more and paste here. And so really, most of these columns are just reference. The only column that I can actually update data and send it back is this expected arrival date column. But I can type them in. I could use formulas. If everything was the current date plus another date, I can copy and paste it in there. And when I've got it all set, I click on update. It checks it, and then it loads it up into Sage. So if I go back to my Sage now and I look at my PO, and these flags just tell me that it was brought in, and I can say I'm looking for PO 11, tab. No, I don't want to make any changes to the other one. Reads in the data. Make this a little bit wider so we can see the data. But you can see these all have been updated, to the 1st of September to reflect that. And so once that information's in Sage, you can use that for, other purchasing functions that you run within Sage that can feed back to your order entry. So, your sales team can know, or if you've got project folks that are running reports to know when inventory is going to be available for them to do a production run or to use on a job. Once you get into Sage, everyone has access to it. So that was my 3 tools. Hopefully I went fast enough and I didn't lose anybody, but I used the time well. Stephen, do we have any questions?
Yes, so we had one question that came in, and at this time, if you guys want to use the chat option, please feel free to type in any questions you have about the Acumen tools. The first question we had was, where could we find a complete list of the Acumen tools?
Yeah, there's about 40 of them. They're all Excel-based import tools like this, and we have them out on the website. So if you just go to acumenfl.com, there's a section called Acumen Tools, and there's a PDF file that lists every single tool. It's got pictures of each of the tools and some kind of examples of how we use it. We've got stuff for bringing in customers and vendors and updating optional fields and payments. And so depending on what you're trying to get into Sage, we've created this quick, easy way for you to bring it into Sage. Sometimes people use them as one-offs, but more often than not, we see people set up these templates on their own without any programming experience, just a little bit of Excel know-how and formula writing, and for a few minutes to a couple hours, and then they can reuse those same things over and over every month. But it's all on the website, or certainly if you talk to your account manager, they can share that information with you as well.
Thanks, Scott. Another question that came in is there any way to include method of payment when uploading bank entries, specifically ACH?
I don't think we have that field. Let me see. That's a great question. If it's not there, I'm happy to have it added. Common services, bank transactions. So method of payment. I don't have that included. Yeah, I should add that in. I'm sorry, I don't have that. That is no problem. I'm surprised no one's asked for that, but that's an easy thing. I can make that part of the next version release. Let me make a note. I'm surprised no one's asked for that before. It should be there.
Hey, Scott.
That was a great one.
So we'll wait a few more minutes. If anyone else have any more questions, feel free to type them in the chat. If not, we can wrap it up early, so I'll give you guys about 1 more minute, see if you guys have any other questions. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. So again, if you guys do have questions, you guys can always email us at am@acumenfl.com or give us a call at 407-965-2411. If you guys want access to the recording, we'll be sure to send it out to the attendees along with the activation codes from our account managers. Again, thanks, Scott, for the presentation. We hope you all have a great week, and we'll be in touch. Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.